Indeed, fear is very central to my theory. It's the thing not to be. It's the thing to get rid of. It's the problem. Love is the answer. Love is what you are supposed to be. And the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. And there was a little book written by a man named Jim Plosky called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And that's a very true phrase. You don't have to learn anything new to become love. All you have to do is get rid of the stuff that's blocking you from being love. Love is your natural state. That's what you are when you get rid of the fear. So fear is an important concept in my model.
Tom Campbell, welcome to Fear Unzipped. This is delightful for me. I heard you first on the Telepathy Tapes, and I talk about that podcast a lot because I think it's a very important one. And when I heard you, my mind was blown because I thought, here's a man, one, that has the answers for everything, and two, he makes so much sense to me. So I wanted to let people know a little bit about your background, that you are a physicist, an author, a consciousness explorer. He spent over 30 years in the U.S. Army intelligence, technical intelligence, missile defense research, and later with NASA on the Ares 1 program. And you're best known for My Big Toe, the theory of everything. So we want to know everything here on Fear Unzipped. And this is a podcast marrying neuroscience or bridging neuroscience and metaphysics. And I couldn't think of a better person to have on this podcast than you. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, you're quite welcome. It's my pleasure and joy to be here with you. You know, information and knowledge is a wonderful thing, but shared information and knowledge is so much better. And that's what you're doing, and that's also what I'm doing. So you give me another opportunity to share. So I appreciate your invitation and being able to be on your show. And indeed, fear is very central to my theory. It's the thing not to be. It's the thing to get rid of. It's the problem. You know, love is the answer. Love is what you are supposed to be. And the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. And there was a little book written by a man named Jim Plosky called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And that's a very, a very true phrase. You don't have to learn anything new to become love. All you have to do is get rid of the stuff that's blocking you from being love. Love is your natural state. That's what you are when you get rid of the fear. So fear is an important concept in my model. But now a little bit from my background. I don't know where to start. I guess I'll go over it very quickly. It's, when I was 7 years old, I had entities come to me while I was almost asleep, not quite, that twilight just before you're ready to fall asleep. I was in that space, and these entities came and asked me if I would like to, they didn't say the word go out of body, but, like to experience something new and fun. And I said, of course. So they got me out of body, and I was delighted with it. I could kind of fly around, and I didn't know how to control it at first. And I was amazed to find that I could go right through a wall, and I could use my intent to go. So this happened to me when I was about 7. And then they proceeded for the next year to put me through a training course of how do you get around how do you work with what I thought then was the non-physical. Of course, I've realized now that consciousness is what's fundamental. Consciousness is the fundamental thing, and this reality we call the physical universe, that's a product of consciousness. It's not fundamental. Anyway, I went through their training course, and it was the funniest thing because when I out of body and in this course, I was a young adult. And then when I go back into my body, I was a 7-year-old. I was very amazed with that transition. So I paid attention to it because it was kind of fun. Here you are and you have all this capability and capacity. And then suddenly it shrinks down, 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 down. You're back. You're 7 years old now. So it was, there was part of my mind that wasn't 7 and some of my mind that was. And it was a little confusing, but I got used to it. And so that was where it all started. And then the door got shut on me. I was told one day after the coursework was over that they were going to close the door and I wouldn't be able to do this anymore. And that bothered me. I said, well, why? Why? What's the problem? And they said, we don't want you to grow up too unlike others. We don't want you to be too weird because we have plans for you. And if you end up in a mental institution, that won't be good. So you need to grow up and be just pretty much like everybody else, except for a few things. We'll always talk to you. We'll always be here. But you need to be just like everybody else. Otherwise, you will have problems in your culture. So I had learned to trust them by then, that they were much wiser and had a much bigger perspective than I did. So that happened. Then here I am, a graduate student working on my PhD, and I see an advertisement for transcendental meditation. Only costs $25 then for students. And it said that you could, if you learn to meditate, you could get by with less sleep. And my graduate work was in nuclear physics, and I was working with a big Van de Graaff generator for low energy nuclear physics. And when that machine worked, you stayed with it and took data because it didn't always work. It was an old machine. So when it was working, if it was working for 3 days, then you'd stay up for 3 days, taking it day and night. You didn't walk away at nighttime and hoping it would still be there the next morning. So I needed something that would help me go with my sleep. So I took the course, learned how to meditate, and I found that it was very, very easy for me. Just simple. It's like I'd been doing it all my life. So I learned fairly quickly that I could debug my software in my head a whole lot faster than I could if I actually was physically there looking at the printout. I could just bring it up in my mind and see where the mistakes were, but I couldn't find these mistakes with my intellect. This was all in the intuitive space. I could intuit them. So that told me that there was another whole bunch of reality that I didn't know anything about, because I had forgotten all that stuff at 7 years old. Although I'd always had my friends, my guides. I learned to call them later guides, but they weren't guides then. They were just entities I knew that would be there. So, that's what physicists do. They model reality. And here I'm a physicist thinking I know a lot about reality, and find out there's another whole part of it that's much bigger than the part I've been studying, and I don't know a thing about it. So I set off to try to learn more. And what else could I do with my consciousness, and what else could it do? And I get out of graduate school, and within 3 or 4 months of taking my first job, I ended up being introduced to Bob Monroe, who wrote the book Journeys Out of the Body, Far Journey's Ultimate Journey. And if you read those books, he talks about TC, physicist. That's me. So I was part of that program. That was before TMI, the Monroe Institute, didn't exist then. It wasn't even an idea then. So I spent 15 to 20 hours a week with Bob Monroe. And to that, I had a family, a young child, and a full-time job. So I was only sleeping 2, 3, 4 hours a day. But I was getting so much energy during the meditation, out-of-body, altered state. My body relaxed completely in those things. So I got by all right. So I did that for about 7 to 8 years. And I did in my mind, I would do research within consciousness, because I realized that if you research consciousness from the outside, study, what diagrams, study somebody else's experiences, you'll never understand consciousness at all. You can't learn it from the outside in. You have to learn it from the inside out. So the deal that myself and a friend that was an electrical engineer, we both told Bob Monroe, if you teach us how to do this so we can study it from the inside, then we'll be your free scientific help, and we'll set up your program, we'll build equipment, we'll do the research. So that was the deal that we made, and that lasted, like I said, about almost 8 years.
Can I ask you something about that, Tom? First of all, a few things are going through my mind right now. Is that when these entities or guides came to you when you were 7, did you have any fear? It sounds like you didn't have any fear at all, because I think a lot of people would be pretty terrified with these beings coming to them in the middle of the night.
No, I had no fear at all. They were just there. They were friendly. They were there. They didn't pose any threat to me. And at 7 years old, you're very open to magic. 7 years old, you don't have a lot of fear about things like that. Yeah, I may have had fear about the boogeyman that would sneak under the bed, those sorts of things. But I think most of that came later, more like 8 or 9 or 10 or something in there. But anyhow, no, it didn't bother me at all. They were very, very friendly, very polite, very respectful. It wasn't anything pushy. Here's what we're going to do with you. It wasn't that sort of thing. It was, would you like us to, or would you be interested in? They were very, very polite. So no, there was no fear. And besides that, my previous incarnations kind of prepared me for what it was I was to do. So I was already kind of primed for what was to follow.
So magic, it's so great. Kids, magic is what the world that kids live in. And I'm hoping that we now as adults are getting back into magic, that we feel magic. And look at the shirt I'm wearing. Listeners can't see this, but I wore this for you today. It has a giant red heart on it, because I know that love is the end game here. I've always felt it to be the end game, and it is. The other thing I was going to say about your guides, I feel as if they nurtured you with all this information. They filled you up with the magic, and to get the curiosity going and put that seed in your head, took it away so you could then get into the sciences, which has taken a little bit more. People don't kind of poo-poo the sciences. Otherwise, it would seem woo-woo what you were talking about. In this way, you have the perfect ability to meld neuroscience with metaphysics. Does that feel accurate at all to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely accurate. I knew at a very young age that I had to go into science, some sort of technical field. That was my mission to do that. And it was a difficult thing, because I was born a very right-brained individual, and I needed to become a very left-brained individual. And what I had to do was learn how to think with logical process, because that did not come naturally to me. I would, I could find the answers without doing the logical process. That wasn't necessary. I could understand things much better just intuitively than I could by working it out logically, but I needed to develop that. So in the beginning, I found things like mathematics to be very difficult. They were a mystery. But eventually, I got it, and I developed that part of my mind, and I found mathematics to be very easy. So right now, I am a person who is extremely right-brained and extremely left-brained, both at the same time. And what that means is that the side of me that is intuitive, that's the right brain, and the side of me that is intellectual or logical, they work together now as a team. The intuitive part goes out and gathers the information, understands the big picture, sees the holistic viewpoint, and the logical side of me takes that and puts it into a perspective and kind of determines what it is I can do with it, how I can best use that information to be helpful and useful to other people. So it takes both. And the problem we have in our culture is that we focus almost entirely on that logical process, that intellectual side. We hone it and educate it and work on it. And we do that our whole lives. And we let that intuitive side just sit there and wither away. And when we were, 3 years old, we were a whole lot more intuitive. When we were 2 years old, we were a whole lot more intuitive than we are now. But by around 7, that gets pushed out of us, which is, I think, why the entity showed up to me around 7, because that's where children start to make the transition from living in an intuitive space to living in a logical or an ordered physical space. And I know that, I talked with a lady who's very good at training, particularly children, but adults as well, to see without their eyes. In other words, totally blindfolded, they can see just as well as they could if they didn't have a blindfold on. And she tells me that if she has a 5-year-old, she can teach him to see without eyes in 1 hour. If she has a 6-year-old, she can teach him in half a day. If she has a 10-year-old, she can teach him in a couple of days. And if she has an adult, well, it's difficult. It's very difficult. So we lose that sense of what's possible. When we're young, almost everything's possible because everything in the world is kind of magical. We don't know how anything works. It just is that way. We don't understand. We get in an automobile or a bus, and a child doesn't know how that works. That's magic. You get in it, you hear a noise, and off you go. And the whole world is like that. It's magic. Things in a refrigerator just get cold for some reason. And they don't have any idea why, and don't really care why. It just is the way their world is. So somebody says, you can see without your eyes just as well as with them. They go, okay, let's do it. So it's the sense of being open to possibilities. That's a very important part of it, because our culture teaches us to, these things are silly. This stuff's woo-woo, and we close off our minds. And then if we have an experience that violates that, well, we talk that away. We say, that was just my imagination. That was just this or that. That didn't really happen. And eventually we'll tell people, yeah, I imagined that, but actually it was a real experience. And people won't go there. So we're very lopsided. Instead of both hemispheres working together, we have one hemisphere and the other one is shriveled up from disuse. And now it's real hard for people to learn how to meditate, because meditation is trying to revive that shriveled up intuitive side. And people try to meditate, and that intellect keeps jumping in and crashing what they're trying to do. So that's why it's so difficult for people, particularly Westerners, to meditate. Just keep their mind totally empty for an hour. That's real hard for most Westerners to do, because they can't control. That intellect now is a bully, and it bullies the intuitive side. And if you're very, very right-brained and don't do intellectual processing, the same thing can happen. Your intuitive side will bully the intellect and put the intellect down and say, intellect, you don't really know anything. You don't have any information. You're a very weak player here. I get so much more out of my intuitive side. And then the right side bullies, the left hemisphere. And what you need to be is balanced to where both of those work together as a team.
That makes so much sense. We're human, after all.
Mm-hmm.
So let's enjoy. First of all, I think curiosity is very important. And that's what this podcast is all about. Just open your mind. If it resonates, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. But it's always important to be curious. But as a human, it's nice to have that balance between right and left. It's just when it gets lopsided where I think we get into some trouble. And I really want to get into the Monroe Institute and what you did there, because I think there are people that don't even know what the Monroe Institute is. Can you share some of the work that you did there? Because it was about remote viewing, and the stories are just incredible.
Yes. Remote viewing was one of the things we did. Dennis, the person I talked about, was an electrical engineer. He and I were both very technical, science-oriented, rational, left brain people. And we had this idea that, we would go work with Bob, and if it turned out that it was a bunch of woo-woo, we would just leave. But if it turned out to be real stuff, then wow, we were real excited to be there. So we were very open-minded, but very skeptical. And I found that that's a good way to be. Everyone should be both open-minded and skeptical. If you're not skeptical, you're liable to wander down some path that is empty and you won't know it. You have to stay skeptical. And I'm probably the only speaker that at the end of a 3-day workshop, I tell them, don't believe anything I say. You have to experience it. If it's not your experience, it's not your truth. You need to experience it. If you read about it in a book, that's somebody else's truth, not yours. And you can choose to believe it or not believe it, but neither one of those will get you anywhere. You need to experience it. So that's one of the things that, Monroe now has, TMI, Monroe Institute. That's a place where you can go experience it. You can experience that non-physical dimension to yourself. You can call that consciousness. You can call that the spiritual dimension. You can call it soul if you're of a religious flavor, but that's how you can explore that and experience it. And there's lots of other places you can do that too. They don't have the market tied up to themselves, but you can go to my website. I have programs and binaural beats that will help keep you into a good meditation state, and programs to teach you all the paranormal things. So there's lots of places you can do that, but Monroe is a good place to start because their program kind of holds your hand and leads you through the process in a very gentle and easy way. So it's a good place to start. Now, what I did there, Dennis and I, we wanted evidence that this was real. So the easiest place to find evidence is remote viewing, because you remote view something and then you go check it and see, did you get it right or did you get it wrong? So you get immediate feedback as to whether you did it right or wrong, which is a real good learning tool. Anytime you're trying to learn and you get immediate feedback, that's very helpful. So that was the thing we did a lot of. But we also did healing, using our minds to heal. That is not quite as good as remote viewing, because that person maybe just got better anyway. It might just be circumstance that you didn't do anything. So you have to heal basically hundreds of people and get what do the statistics look like? And then it depends on what you're trying to heal. If it's a chronic condition that somebody's had for 15 years, all the doctors have given up on it because they don't know how to solve it. And then you work on them and suddenly it goes away. Well, there's a lot of evidence in that, even though it was just a one-off. So it depends on the situation. So we were looking for evidence. We did mind-to-mind communications. We talked with dead people. We talked with people who had never been to this reality system, had never incarnated here. So we just were exploring what there was out there and what value it could be to us in our learning, in our growth, what would help us understand things better. And I was a physicist, so my part was to come up with the theory. Why was it happening? What were the limitations? What was the nature? What's the structure and the logic behind it? So that was kind of my part. And I worked on that for 33 years before I published the books, the My Big Toe books. It took me that long to figure it out because I'm a scientist and I have to figure it out, piece by piece. My entity friends didn't tell me anything. None of it is channeled. None of it is channeled. All of it I had to figure out. And the reason for that is I had to own it. It had to be mine. If all you are is transcribing it, you don't really understand it. You're just transcribing. You're just saying the words. If you create it yourself, if you understand it from the bottom up, it's yours. You own it. You can explain it. You have to live it as well. You can't it's not just an intellectual process. It's a process of becoming and being. You have to change in order to understand it. So it's a different kind of thing, and that's where I needed to go. So that's the way I had to do it. So Monroe Institute's a very fine place to go and have experiences And the thing you have to do more than anything else there to be successful is just be open-minded. Just don't worry about, is this real yet? Just have the experience. Later, you can judge how real it is. But if you judge it right in the beginning, you'll destroy the experience. So that would be my advice to people if they go there.
You have great examples, Tom. When you were in a booth, and then there's a booth between you, Soundproof, and then another booth that your friend was in, and you were seeing the same images. You were strolling down a street. Can you share just a story about that so people can understand?
Yes, when Dennis and I would come out to the lab, and we'd spend a couple of hours there building equipment, doing some of our own research projects. And a couple hours later, Bob would come up to the lab, and this particular day, he said, I've got a new task for you. Got something, because he'd often give us tasks, things to try to find out, places to go, people to see, remote viewing targets or other things. But he says, I've got a new task for you. He says, I want you to go out of body, but stay together. So just always stay with each other. Go do whatever you do, but just do it together. So we did. We went out. By that time, we could get out of body very easily. It was a simple thing to do, and we could do it very quickly. So we did. We got out of body, went up above the lab in the air. We met there and had an intention to stay together. After that, it was just one adventure after another. We talked with people. We had conversations with each other. We saw things, went places, and after it was all done, and it lasted close to 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours. That was kind of what our sessions usually did. And the session ended, and it was a very evidential session. In other words, lots of very, specific things happened. Specific conversations were had. So we walk out down the hallway, and yes, I was in booth number 1, he was in booth number 3, and these booths were acoustically separated. They were all soundproofed. So there was a soundproof booth between us. And if one of us had screamed as loud as we could, the other one might have heard a little muffled, sound, but that's about it. And just normal talking voice was totally lost. So Dennis and I couldn't hear each other. And my booth also happened to be a Faraday cage. It was metal sheeting all around it, and then soldered, or welded down the edges. So I couldn't have any electromagnetic signals coming or going either. So anyway, we walked down the hallway, and Bob looked at us and said, well, did you two think you were together? And we looked at each other and said, well, seemed like it to me. And Dennis said, yeah, seemed like it to me. He said, well, listen to this. And he had taped our voices because he taught us while we were out of body, we would explain, we would share with him what we were experiencing. And he could then ask us questions that we would ask the person we were talking to, or he just would listen. So there was a microphone that was about a half an inch from my lips and one about a half an inch from his lips hanging down from the ceiling. So we talked through the whole session. So Bob had recorded everything Dennis said on one tape and everything I said on another cassette tape. And when we went up to the control room, he rewound both tapes and then started them both at the same time and synchronized them in time. So now they were, together in time. And there was Dennis and I talking to each other on these tapes. Tom, did you see that the thing? And I'd say, oh, yeah, you mean the one that's over there next to the yellow, whatever? He'd say, yeah, that's the one. And we were having conversations with each other. We were experiencing the same things, talking to the same people, talking with each other. And there it was, 2 independent cassette tapes of each one of us, who was impossible for us to hear the other. And we had been on this adventure together out of body. So that was a really big deal for me. After that, I stopped asking, is this real? There's a big difference. You get these things at an intellectual level very easily. You do the statistics, you say, well, it's 10,000 to 1 that I'm just a good guesser at remote viewing. The statistics show that it's very improbable that you're just a good guesser. But to get it at the emotional level, at the being level, is a different thing. So yes, okay, we're doing all these very strange things every day. As a matter of fact, we did so many strange things every day that they weren't even strange anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it just was another day. Another day at the lab, you know, another impossible thing happened 10 times. You know, so we didn't really make a whole lot out of that experience of us being together. But for me, it was the place that where my gut level, my emotional, my being level got it, that this is real. And that was a big difference for me. Now, Dennis didn't have that experience with it. It was just another weird day at the lab for him. But he got that same gut level jolt that I did about 3 or 4 months later in a different situation. So it takes a while to get to the point where particularly if you're, you know, a techie. I'm a physicist. He's an electrical engineer. You know, it took a lot for us to step over that threshold. But once you do, then, you know, there's never any going back, because suddenly your world is so much larger, so much bigger, so much more information that you can get, that you have, and it changes who you are, changes your life.
I think it makes life so much more interesting when you traverse those spaces. I find every day is just a bit of an adventure because you're traversing other spaces. You say that our experience here is like a learning lab. Can you explain what that is and what is consciousness? And I know I don't know a lot, but there are the schools of thought. There's materialism and there's post-materialism, where they look at consciousness differently. Can you, in very lay person's terms, explain this to us?
Yes, I can. Consciousness goes by many names. As it turns out, consciousness is fundamental. It's the fundamental thing. And I realized that early in my research with consciousness, because I could do things from a position of consciousness, you know, just from in my mind. I could do things that would change the physical reality. I could modify physical reality, like healing. You know, you can modify physical reality, like making the sun shine next Saturday when you're going to have a picnic, you know, instead of raining. So you can modify the physical reality with your intent, with your mind, but there's nothing that you can do in the physical that changes consciousness. So the arrow of causality runs from consciousness to the physical. So that was the first, you know, one of the first things I learned at the lab was that consciousness is the thing that's fundamental, and that this physical universe is a derivative of consciousness. Now, I didn't understand how that worked or exactly what that meant. I just knew it was true. So that made it like a paradox, something that I needed to understand or solve. So that's the key idea. Now, consciousness is not created by a brain. The brain's created by consciousness. The whole physical body, the whole physical world's created by consciousness. So consciousness is a thing that, from our viewpoint in this, you know, when we see ourselves as physical humans in a physical world, then consciousness is not physical. It's not of this world. It's prior, it's before, it's more fundamental than this world. Now, consciousness is also called spirit. The spirit that, you know, animates you, that's your consciousness. And it's also called soul. If you're of a more religious flavor, then consciousness is soul. So consciousness is what you are. You and I and everybody else here, and the dogs and the cats and bumblebees, you know, they all have a piece of consciousness too. But all consciousness doesn't have the same capacity. There's a consciousness for a dog, and that's at a dog's capacity, and humans at a human capacity. And over the human race, there's lots of different capacities that, you know, that different humans have as far as consciousness goes. So understanding that consciousness is fundamental is the key. The next big thing you have to understand is that consciousness created this physical thing we call the physical universe, this physical reality. And it invented it for a reason. And that was for pieces of consciousness like us to experience, to have experiences. Because as it turns out, consciousness evolves toward lowering entropy. Now, that's a physics term. Entropy is a measure of disorder. If you have a whole lot of bits and they're all random, there's no information there. But if you order those bits, you get some information. You get an ordering that could stand for something, be a symbol for a number or a letter or something. So consciousness evolves to lower its entropy, and it turns out, and I can very logically and precisely tell you that consciousness lowering its entropy is the way consciousness evolves. And lowering entropy in a social system is equivalent to caring, sharing, cooperation, compassion. All these things are low entropy things in a social system. If you have a lot of people working together who have to share the same resources, well, the low entropy situation, that is, let's say, the less chaos, the more everybody wins rather than a few people win and everybody else loses. That's high entropy. Low entropy is everybody works together, everybody shares, everybody cares for each other. That way, all the resources can be distributed in a way that makes the most sense to everyone. So that is the nature of consciousness evolution. We are evolving as pieces of consciousness toward becoming love, caring. That's why we're here. And we need to experience to do that. And by our experiences, by our choices, we have choices. I define consciousness as awareness with a choice. That's all. It's a simple definition. And by the choices we make, everyday choices, whether we do the dishes and complain about it or whether we just do the dishes because the dishes need to be done, that everyday choices will make us either evolve positively or de-evolve, which moves toward fear. Evolution moves toward love. So that's why this physical reality had to be created, because it gave a game, it gave a setting, it gave a context to experience. And this context then is a virtual reality. The humans are the avatars. We are pieces of consciousness. We're the players of that human avatar, and we make all of their choices. And this works out exactly the same way any virtual reality game works out. If you play The Sims, you make all the choices for your Sims character. If you don't make any choices, they just stand there and don't do anything. So you are the choice maker. And by making those choices, you evolve or de-evolve as a player. You learn how to play the game. You learn how to level up. You learn how to succeed within the game by making better and better choices. Well, in our game, the way you succeed is you become love. You become caring. You become helpful. You go away from fear. You go away from self-centeredness. Self-centeredness is based on fear. People are self-centered because they're afraid that I won't get what I want, what I need, what I deserve, what I have to have. And that fear, or I'm not good enough, or I'm insecure because I think I'm not good enough. I should be better than I am. And I'm not successful enough. And all of these things are fear-based. And that's what creates all of our problems. Fear is the opposite of love. And inasmuch that your choices are motivated by fear, those will almost always be poor choices. As much as your choices are motivated by love, those will always turn out to be good choices.
How do we put ourselves into a space that we don't walk down that fear trap and think, if I do this, oh my gosh, what if this could happen, that could happen? I mean, I lived a lot of my life like that, waiting for the other shoe to drop, until I got into neuroscience, which opened my metaphysical abilities up tremendously. And then I realized there's no point for me to dwell in that fear space. But how do we react more from that love space? We're in traffic and it's a mess and we have to get to an appointment and we're late and we might miss the job opportunity. How do we shift that?
Well, let me give you just a little sketch on how a person should go through life and actually create a very happy and satisfying existence. Right now, most people want to manipulate the world and everybody in it and manipulate other than self to be the way they want it to be, the way they know is best, in their idea. This is best for everybody. I want my husband to pick up his dirty underwear and socks and put them in the hamper because he should do that. I want him to do that. I want my wife to do this and be this way. I want my children to grow up and be doctors and lawyers and so on. I want this, I want that. And we try to manipulate life to be the way we want it. We try to manipulate the boss and our coworkers to think that we're really good workers and we deserve the promotion. And so we go through life and how can I act and be in order to get what I want? How can I talk to other people and convince them how they should be, in order to help them be what I want? But it's all about being self-centered. You see, it's about what I want. So we tend to put most of our thinking and resources and attention on making the world turn out the way we'd like it to turn out. And we think we're doing it for others. Oh, I want my children to be doctors and lawyers because that would be a good profession. And that's good for them. Now, it's what you want. Your children may want to become artists or dancers or poets or something else, but you want them to do this. So it's not really for your children, it's for you. And all of those things that you think you're doing, oh, well, Susie would really be happier if she did this and did that. Well, that's what you think Susie wants. Susie may want something else altogether. Susie is not you. So we project ourselves onto everything and everybody. And basically, it turns out us wanting to help everybody else be the way we know they should be. Things happen the way we want them to. Now, that is a recipe for disaster. That won't happen, and you'll be constantly frustrated and unhappy and sitting in that traffic chewing your nails because things aren't working out the way they should. Well, it's much better if you stop trying to make things work out the way they should. If you just let people be, accept the way things do work out. Let your children be poets if that's what they want to be. Support them in their desire to be a dancer or a singer or whatever it is they like. If that's what they want, support that. See where it goes. And you can help them be wise. You can say, well, you also need a kind of a backup. If that doesn't work for you, at the same time you're taking voice lessons, maybe you should also take, some courses in this or that, because you might need to fall back on that till you make it to the big time. So anyway, we need to be helpful to our children, but not tell them how to be and what they need to do. They need, after a certain age, to make those choices themselves, and you need to be a guide for them. Tell them the upsides and the downsides, but let them make the choice. Well, anyway, I digress. So the thing to do is to let things happen as they are, because what's really important isn't what happens to you, like you make that appointment on time, that you're stuck in traffic. What's really important is how you deal with what happens to you. That's what's important. You see, that's back to the choice. You're here to make choices. So the choices you make and how to deal with what happens, that is how you evolve or de-evolve the quality of your consciousness. So if it's the choice, then you also can choose to leave early because there may be some bad traffic. That's a choice. To wait till the very last minute so that you can just possibly get there on time and then drive fast, that's a choice. And you have to realize that those are all choices. And you have to start making better choices. And that way you can learn. You see, the way you make a choice is you say, okay, I have several things I could do here. Which is the choice that will lower entropy for the greatest number of people, for myself, everybody else, and the system? So what choice is going to be helpful, or most agreeable with myself, with everybody that I interact with, and with the larger consciousness system? That's the low entropy. That's the love choice. So you make that choice. Now, It may have not been a good choice. You may have had other things motivating you, but that's okay. You've done your best. You thought about it. You've done your due diligence. You make the choice. There's no penalty for making a wrong choice. That's how we learn. We learn from our mistakes. If we don't make mistakes, we don't learn much. So we learn from our mistakes. So you make a poor choice. Now you should learn from that choice. So every time you make a choice, look back on what happened. What was the result of that choice? How did it affect others? How did it affect you? And was it a good choice? If it was not, then you start asking questions like, well, why did I think that was a good choice? What was I missing? What was I not understanding that I picked that as the best choice? And how can I keep myself from misunderstanding that again? I need to learn the lessons involved here. And if it was a good choice, pat yourself on the back and say, yeah, you got that one right. You should do that some more. Now, there's no penalty for making a poor choice, but there is a penalty for not learning from the choice. And the penalty for not learning from the choice is you get to do it again. That's the penalty. And if you don't learn it again, you get to do it again, and so on. You just get to keep working on that choice till you finally figure it out and grow above it and beyond it. Then you won't have that choice anymore. You will have grown up to where you know how to deal with that choice. But if you don't get it, that's the penalty, is you have to do it again and again and again, for you to get it.
Yeah.
So that's the way the world works, because if you do that, if you see that I'm here to learn, I make choices and I'm here to learn. I'm not here to manipulate things to come out the way I know it's best. I'm here to make choices and learn. And you do that, after you've been doing that for some years, you're going to get wiser and wiser. You're going to grow up. And as you get wiser and grow up, your life is going to get better and better. Your relationships are going to get better. Your relationship with your teenagers are going to get better. Everything is going to work for you. You will be happy. You'll smile a lot. You will find yourself to be fulfilled and satisfied. And you'll just have a really good life because you will learn to let go of the stuff that doesn't work. You will be aware of it rather than being unaware, making a mistake, then making it again, and then making it again, and then doubling down because it's not working. So now you're going to try it 3 times as hard, and that'll fail too, until you realize you're not progressing with love. You're regressing with fear. So that's the way to go through life. Now,
and can I ask you, oh, excuse me. I was just going to ask you about intuition. When you get that gut feeling that this is what I should do, but oftentimes we don't listen to that gut feeling. We rationalize something else. We start using our left side of our brain. How can we really tap into that intuition so it's more of a companion and a guide for us, so we are making good choices?
Okay, there's 2 ways really you can get there. One is the traditional way, which is meditation. Okay, in meditation, you just learn to be quiet and be with yourself. It's just that simple. There's really no other component to it. You just learn to stop the logical processing, stop the intellect from just jabbering on. Oh, what about this? What am I going to do about that? What are we going to have for dinner? Do I need to go to the store first? What's my boss going to say when I turn this in? Your mind's just full of all this junk, and you just have to turn that off and not have that in your mind. And there's lots of techniques that you can learn to do that. But one that's typical is a mantra. You just fill your head with a sound, and that kind of uses up all the space. So you don't have space for thoughts anymore because your head's full of the sound. So it's like you just pick something that doesn't mean anything to you, just some sound, and you fill your head with it, and that will help keep the thoughts away. And then eventually you can do less and less and less, and eventually you can just go into that state and all the thoughts drop away, and you can stay there for as long as you like. But you usually start with some kind of aid, like a mantra or some technique to do that. So that's one way. And what that does is basically you learning discipline with your mind. You're trying to teach your mind discipline. So it thinks about what you want it to think about It focuses on what you want it to focus on. You build a strong intention rather than attention that's flying here and there and everywhere. And that gives you a much more powerful mind. And you can understand things better and see things better. And you can start gathering in information that is in the realm of consciousness. There's lots and lots of information in consciousness. And you can tap into that. Yes, and you can download it and you can learn from it. And that's what we talk about intuitively. Oh, I just got the solution to the problem intuitively. You're getting that data out of a database. And this database is there because consciousness has the rendering engine that's rendering this virtual reality. And that database is required for the rendering of the virtual reality. So that's what the ancients called the Akashic records. It's just a database that's required for the rendering of the virtual reality. And you as a piece of consciousness can access all that information. So see, you have these two channels by which you process data. One's intuitive channel. The intuitive channel is wonderful in that it has all the information you could think of. Everything, even probable future information, all the things that could possibly happen and the probability that they will. And past information, everything that could have happened and the probability that it would have, as well as a thread of what actually did happen. So all of that is available to you, and it's in excruciating detail. All of it's there. So you can access that anytime you want with consciousness. It's just a piece of consciousness, and so are you a piece of consciousness. So it's a skill that's really not hard to learn. Again, it doesn't require any new techniques. It just requires you to get rid of the junk that's in the way. It's the same sort of thing. If you can offload the beliefs and the fears and so on, then it's an easy channel. So here you have the intuitive channel that has very precise and very complete information. But the process to that channel is your own mind. And that's usually very ratty. And if you're in our culture, you've never developed your intuitive side. You've been told that that's nonsense. That's all woo-woo. So you don't develop it. So you're worse than a 2-year-old child as far as your ability to develop and work with that intuitive side. So that's kind of where most people are. But there's another way that you can get there. It's not just through meditation. You can get there also through imagination. You can have a daydream. We call it daydream our imagination. But if you get into that daydream with all of your senses, you smell it, you taste it, you see it, you hear it, you feel it, you're really in that daydream. And pretty soon you'll find that daydream takes on a life of its own. You're not playing in all the parts anymore. The other characters are playing their own parts and they're doing and saying things that you never would have dreamed of, And now you find yourself in this other reality frame that has a life of its own. And the allergic consciousness system will tap into that story that you started, and it will pick it up there and lead you to any place it wants you to go to help you learn. And that's another way to do an out-of-body, is through your imagination. And that's good that there's two paths, because some people just have a real hard time with discipline in their minds. Maybe they're ADHD or they're, just anxious and they have a lot of anxiety. And telling them to sit down and meditate is, you might as well ask them to learn how to levitate. They just can't do that. So it's good to have another way. Rather than emptying the mind, you fill the mind with information, but not information that you control. You let the control go and let it just happen on its own. And when you do that, you end up in the same space as meditation, in that you let the physical reality that your body's in, you let that go. You're no longer in that reality. You're in this imagined reality that you started, and you're in it with characters that are in there with you. So when you let go of the physical world, then you're in the same place as letting go of the physical world when you go through meditation. So it takes you to that same space. It's just another way to go that some people find easier. And
when it comes down to, Tom, it's paranormal is the normal, but we call paranormal unique. So if somebody has a certain gift and they can speak to their medium or a psychic or an intuitive of some kind, that they're special because they are paranormal. But paranormal is what we all are. We just haven't taken the dust off yet.
Absolutely. Paranormal is a perfectly normal part of being conscious. If you're conscious, you can be paranormal. It's just developing that intuitive side. Everything paranormal comes through the intuitive side. Nothing paranormal comes through the logical side. It all is part of the intuitive side. So that development of that intuitive side is open to everyone.
Are we here to do that? Are we here to open up that side of us? Is
Well,
that part of our purpose here? Besides love?
Yeah, I would say that is part of our purpose because that makes us a whole person. What we need to do to become whole persons is to develop both our intuitive and our intellectual side so they work together. So we're balanced. We're not out of balance. So we don't have one being the bully of the other, being dominant. We're not left brain dominant or right brain dominant. We are whole people that work in both. And what that does is it gives you a whole new space in which to live. I have a word I call decision space. Decision space, there's all those things that you know that are your choices. So if there's some way for me to be, and I have 10 choices that I could be this way or 9 other choices, then that's my decision space. Now there may be another 50 things that I don't even know about. I'm not aware of. I may have grown up in a very industrial kind of family, and going to college just isn't in my reality. It's not that I'm not smart enough. It never occurs to me to do something like that because it's not my reality. So there's lots of things that are out there that could be in your decision space that they aren't. So that's decision space. Now, when you develop your intuitive side, your decision space grows tremendously because now you have all this other information coming in that's part of your world. So you just live in a much bigger reality. And it's not that you have to go meditate and get some of this data that's intuitive. That intuitive data just becomes a part of who you are, a part of what you are. And you just live a life with all this information, these choices that you didn't have before. So you live in a larger world with a larger decision space. And it's just as automatic as it is to us living with our intellects. We get up and we brush our teeth and we put on our clothes and we drive to work, and we don't have to think about it a whole lot. We just do it because it's this part of us. Well, the intuitive side, the paranormal side of it just becomes part of us. It's just the way we are. We don't have to think about it or meditate. It's there. We meet somebody and we can see immediately whether they're happy or unhappy. And if they're unhappy, why? What is their problem? And the feelings and where they are and what they need and what would be a good thing to say to them to make them feel better. All of that stuff, you just know it because that's all part of the database. Mm-hmm. And your intellect then will come in and say, well, then we could do this or we could do that. Here's the choices I see, that'll be rational for you to interact with that. And you're a whole person and you see life in a different way. And that's a path that everybody's on. It's just some people have developed their intuitive side more than others. And usually there's a reason for that. If you look at spiritual teachers and look at, say, mediums, you'll find there's a common thread with a lot of them. A lot of the mediums had very troubled childhoods. They had very ugly families to live in. And what they did is they escaped through their minds. They had their own imaginary spaces that they went in their head because the space they had in the physical world was not nice and so upsetting that they just kind of learned to get into that non-physical world with their non-physical friends and their non-physical things because that was a much happier place. And then you find them, 30 years later, they're your medium that you go to talk to dead people. because they had this dysfunctional childhood that taught them from an early age to escape into their consciousness, escape out of this reality. So getting out of this reality and connecting to other things is just natural for them. And you find a lot of teachers who went through this thing called the dark night of the soul, where they hit bottom. It was just, they don't want to live anymore. They're ready to die. They're ready to quit. Everything has been so bad, and everything they do turns to mud and dust, and they just don't want to go anymore. They hit the very bottom. And when they're down at the bottom, they finally let that ego go. And they look around at the world without the ego and they go, oh, I created all that dysfunction. That was my choice. I created it all. And then from there, they start going up. And then they not only get back to where they were, but they go past that and they become spiritual teachers. Well, how did they get there? They went there, a lot of it, because they hit that dark night of the soul first. And that's what launched them in that direction. So yes, it's, that's why we're here. We're here to learn and to grow. And the good news is that our success, our evolution, is also the success and evolution of the whole, because we're just parts of the whole. So as we evolve, the larger conscious system evolves with us. So it has an incentive to help us. So we're not alone in this struggle. We also, if we make a connection with that non-physical space called consciousness, we'll get all the help we can use. When you do that imaginary thing and you go off in an out of body, you will get things that will help you grow. You'll have choices to make that will help you grow up. The out of body state is just like a single player game where you get choices that you have to make. And the choices you make anywhere all help you grow up. When you're in a dream, you're having a dream at night and you make choices. Those choices matter just as much there as they matter here. By the choices you make there, you evolve or de-evolve, just like the choices you make here. It's all you. The neat thing about the dream is you don't have that intellect that's playing the image. Oh, I'm kind because I don't want people to think badly about me, so I'm going to help this little lady across the street, because kind is a good thing to be. And besides, I'll get some points. Other people will see me being kind, and then I'll get a couple of gold stars that way. Well, that's acting kind, and that's different than being kind. So in order to evolve, you have to be kind. So all the choices you make are important, and the ones you make in a dream are mostly important because your intellect isn't there with that image. The things you make in your dreams are really the things that's expressing the real you.
Yes, because you don't have the filters of being awake and things stopping you and judging. You don't have the same kind of judgment. Right. I often say that what I try to do is raise my frequency, my vibration as high as I can to that love or higher. It's the intention that I set when I do this podcast too. And of course, I'm not successful at it all the time, but it is something that I'm very conscious of. And I know that if I do that, I'm going to affect you, and I'm going to affect people thousands of miles away, because we're all connected through consciousness.
Absolutely. That's one of the rules. There's a couple of little rules. One is every consciousness is netted. We're all on the net. We all interact with each other. And that includes your dog and your cat. You can have a conversation with your dog and your cat, but you have to have it at their level, which mainly is the level of feeling. It's not the level of intellect. It's the level of feeling. And you can have that conversation, but you can connect with everyone. And we do all the time. We have those conscious connections. We're just not aware of it. There's a couple of things that we can do to help ourselves be more positive, because being positive is the key here of getting rid of fear. Just be positive. So if you find that what you see on the internet and what you see on the news is upsetting to you, turn it off. Pull the plug. Just decouple yourself from it. Be positive. If you go talk to your friends and all they can talk about is complain about the things that aren't right, go someplace else. Listen if you must, but don't share it. Don't become it. just stay away from things that are negative. Complaining is negative. Being upset, angry, uptight, anxious, all those things are all on the negative side. Feeling insecure, feeling unloved, feeling I don't get the credit I'm due. All those things are negative things. You just walk away from that and don't go there. Don't participate in it. If you feel it, push it away and say, I don't need to wallow in self-pity there. Okay, my life's hard right now. Now, what's important is not that my life's hard, but how am I going to deal with it? That's what's important. And you'll also find that we are social creatures. Connect with other people. It's really hard to be positive if you stay locked in a room all by yourself all the time. That leads to negativity. That leads to seeing the dark side rather than the bright side. Focus on everything that's good. Don't wallow in self-pity. Wallow in gratitude. If you feel like wallowing, wallow in gratitude. Look at all the things in your life that are good. You have heat in the winter and you have air conditioning in the summer. You have 3 meals a day and your children are healthy. Just look at all the things that are positive in your life and stop going over all the things that are negative. Focus on the positive. Have relationships. Go out, meet people, be social, connect, unplug all the negative stuff. Don't participate in the negative conversations. Don't talk about other people. Don't feel superior to anybody. You are not superior to anybody. You're just different from all those other people. They're just like you. They're on their path doing the best they can with what they have. And then you just let them be. Okay, you think what they're doing is dysfunctional, but you're not their judge. Let them be however they are, because they have to grow up in their own way and in their own time. And if you go over there and say, hey, listen, person, you're not very grown up. Here's what you need to be. All you'll do is push them further into their dysfunction. They will double down on their beliefs. So don't be part of the problem. Just be part of the solution. You can't fix other people. You have to give them space where they can grow themselves. And that means you have to give them space that's friendly, space that's positive, not space that's judging. Don't judge other people, and don't be a harsh judge on yourself either. So these are all some of the ways you can get rid of fear. Be sociable, be positive, let go of the negative, stop complaining, stop seeing what the problems are, focus on what's positive. And if you do that, in the beginning, it'll just be your intellect making yourself do it. But if you've done that for a few months, you'll feel better. And you'll start to, actually be doing it because it's better rather than just because you're trying to make yourself do it.
Exactly. Something that I do, if I'm in a, not feeling great or disappointed or I'm down on myself, I think of something that delights me. And I have this photo with these goats that I'm feeding, and I'm laughing, and I look at that photo and it lights me up. I can remember that feeling, and it shifts me into my heart space, and with so much gratitude and appreciation. Tom, we're here at the end of this for this time. There's so much more that I wanted to talk to you about, but we'll do it another time for sure. I did have a few questions that I ask all my guests. Can I ask you those questions?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
I have the time. Take the time you need.
Okay. What is your number one go-to strategy when you're in your own mental distress?
I take a deep breath and I think this too shall pass. And I think that in the long run and in the bigger picture, everything is going to be just fine. This is a minor blip. This is a bump in the road, and don't turn it into anything more than a bump in the road. Yes, the road has bumps, and sometimes the bumps hurt. Sometimes the bumps are jarring. Sometimes they're very disappointing. But you just have to let them be and say, it is what it is. Now, how am I going to deal with it, and deal with it in a way that is positive, not complain about it, not fuss about it, not keep going over in your head how awful it is and how unfair it is, but just accept it, and it is. The other thing to do is to realize that you are not the center of the universe. You're not the master of the universe. And there's a lot of things that are going to happen in your life that you have no control over. And if you don't have any control over them, then let them be. You don't have to worry about them or stress them. They'll all take care of themselves. It's not your job to fix the world or fix anybody else in it. You just live your own life, make your own positive choices, and the rest of it will take care of itself. So when you run into those things that hurt and are disappointing, just say, that's the way it is. How do I live with it positively?
Perfect. What is a successful life to you?
Successful life is a life in where you have gotten rid of your fear, which gets rid of your ego, which gets rid of all your beliefs. So if you have the fear gone, that's why we're here, is to get rid of fear, become love. That's success. And whether you do that and are dirt poor and live in a 500 square foot house with a dirt floor, doesn't make any difference at all. If you can do that, you're successful here. It's becoming love. It's being positive. It's caring about other people. It's not being self-centered. That's success. And your economic status or your social status or any of the rest of it is totally irrelevant, because if you do that, you'll also be happy. You'll be satisfied and you'll be fulfilled. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're in a little tiny house with a dirt floor or in a mansion. It makes no difference. If you can accomplish that, you'll have a happy life, and it'll be a charmed life, and you'll realize that everything you really, really need will fall right at your feet just as you need it, because that's what happens when you live your life right.
Beautiful. And the last is a sentence to complete. In the past I was, and now I am.
So in the past I was, and now I am. Well, I would go back to something that I experienced probably about 40 years ago, and that was in the past. I tried to control everything I could control, and I believed that my life being happy and being as much as it could be depended on me controlling as much as I could control to make sure that it turned out that way. And then I realized then that my controlling was what was keeping it all stirred up and messy. And that even if I was the master of the universe, if I forced things to be the way I thought they should be, it would just mess everything up. It wouldn't be optimal at all, because I didn't know enough to know what was optimal for everybody. I'm just too ignorant to do that. And then I realized that the best thing I could do for myself and everybody else is just tend to my own business, get my own head on right, get rid of my own fear, and let everybody else do what they do, and not try to control things that are beyond my, myself. There's only one person that you have control over, and that's you, not anybody else. So work with what you have, and that's work on yourself. And this thing about, well, George makes me unhappy. He insulted me, and I'm really angry. You choose to be angry. George doesn't make you angry. Nobody makes you angry. Nobody makes you unhappy. Nobody makes you unfulfilled. You choose to be that way because of the choices that you make. Take responsibility for your own choices. You're not stuck in traffic because of that stupid traffic. You're stuck in traffic because you didn't leave early enough, or you didn't make the right choice in the route to go. That's why you're stuck in traffic. And realize that almost all of the problems that you have, all the pain that you suffer, is mostly self-created out of poor choices. Choices to control, choices to dominate, choices to that are self-centered, all about me. So those are the things that I think are key, the things that you have to change.
I was going to just say that word key, and love and be loved. I think I've always said that's sort of my mantra. I think it's the key. Tom, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me at multiple places. One is a website to go to, and you can have a lot of the information I just skipped over, you'll find there. And that's at www.my-big-toe.com. I have a YouTube channel that has like, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 hours worth of video, which is very daunting. But I also have two ways to get past that. And that is one, I have a search tool on my website that you can search all those thousands of hours by subject. And it'll give you little links that'll pick a 10-minute thing right in the middle of a 3-hour talk that's just on the subject you want. And I have an AI called AI Guy. And AI Guy will speak in my voice, and the words he utters will be at least 98% of the words I would utter if I answered your question. He's especially trained on my work, especially trained on everything I've written and said. So he is a very, very accurate representation of myself. So if you'd like to ask me a question, you can always go ask AI Guy. He will give you a great answer. Yeah, we tested him a lot. I got a lot of questions that were hard questions that were not simple or easy questions, and I'd answer them. Like one of them was like 13 questions, and I'd answer them, and then they'd give them to AI Guy, get AI Guy to answer, then compare the results. And the results are that he's just about as good as I am.
Wow, that's amazing. And we're going to put all that, we'll put all of that in the show notes so people will have all the links and everything.
Right.
So they'll be able to get that. Is fascinating, Tom.
Yeah. One other thing I have there is that I have some binaural beats that will help you get in a meditation state, a theta state, and stay there for as long as you want to. I have some courses that will teach you how to do all things paranormal and will explain the paranormal and how they work and why they work that way, what to do and what not to do. It's kind of those kinds of courses. And there's a bunch of other things. There's a thing in and around there that you'll run into called the Hub. And the Hub is an organization that produces products and courses and things basically out of my work, out of the My Big Toe work. And they're always looking for volunteers, people to join, people to help, people to teach, people that are just interested and want to help. So if you want to get into these sorts of things, if you want to do things that are paranormal, you want to see the larger consciousness system or understand the philosophy or the physics of it, then you can find it there between my website and the Hub. You'll have lots and lots of choices, and it'd be nice if you volunteer, because my organization is 100% volunteers.
Yes, your partner Eileen was telling me that, and that you have over 200 volunteers, and that says a lot about you. So, oh my gosh, Tom, thank you so much for being here on Fear Unzipped. We have a lot more to cover, so you'll have to come back.
I'd be glad to come back. Yes, it's as I said before, knowledge is wonderful, but shared knowledge is so much better. So we're both in the same business, and that's trying to help other people make better choices.
Absolutely, and ourselves. So
yes, of course, grow ourselves and everybody else. Yes, that is what I do as well. So I'd be glad to come back, and we can do this again.
Thank you, Tom. It was just such a delight to have this conversation, and much more later, always.
Okay.